Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast. Today, I'm here with Nadine, and I'm so happy that we can finally get together with Nadine because I've been wanting to interview her for a while now. And you know how it is. She goes to different countries all the time, so I was never sure where she was going to be. But we finally got her. She's in Portugal right now. And thank you, Nadine, for making the time to talk to us because I would like to talk to you a little bit about your happiness podcast. Now, I know that you've been doing it for a while now, and it's really good. And I love the interviews and what people have to say about happiness. And I wanted to interview you and just ask you how, what led you to that and what it's about and so on. So without further ado, everybody, here's Nadine. Introduce yourself to our listeners, Nadine.
First of all, thank you so much, Deborah, for having me and inviting me, thinking of me. And hello, everyone. Very to be here because I've been following you obviously and your podcast as well, and so it's an honor for me to be here. And so my name is Nadine. I'm originally from Germany, but I would always say I'm a citizen of the world. I've been traveling to over 47 countries it's now, I think, and
dreams come true.
Probably, yeah, exactly. And I probably lived in over 8 of them or so. So in Africa, the US, and Europe, all over Europe. And now I'm back at my happiest place, Portugal, the South Coast, the Algarve, just right by the ocean, and it's super super beautiful here. So I'm very very happy to be back actually just since Sunday. And I'm also a Bikram yoga teacher, and that's how we met.
That's how we met.
At my teacher training, and that's exactly I think 5 years ago because it started
time flies.
September 2017.
Amazing. And look how you've transformed your entire life in just 5 years.
And I just
tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. Yeah, I just said it before to you, and then you said let's share it also with you guys, because I was at the time when we met and I did my teacher training also for that reason. It was a very very difficult and dark time in my life, I guess, and I was, first of all, very lost in my corporate job and very unfulfilled, and I felt I was doing the right thing. I was living the life people would think, you have everything. I had a husband and, a house, a car, a cat, and a corporate job and a career. And everything you would think, that's what people
from the outside, it looks perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I was very, very unfulfilled, and I didn't really know where that was coming from. But now also interviewing a lot of other people myself and coaching other people myself, now I know that probably it is the spiritual calling, or the side of us, when we just we know that there's something more. It's this kind of hero's journey when the hero get the call, and then you have to go for it. But then it's obviously lots of ups and downs. So but that's where I was when we met. And then I went to the teacher training, and I thought, okay, I can take a sabbatical for 3 months, become a yoga teacher, and then after I will be happy forever. And that wasn't really good. No, so I came back, and then I moved to London, and I took a job there, and that's when we met again. So that time before COVID, we actually met a lot in a short time. And but then in London, actually, it was getting really bad, because then I had a massive depression or depressive anxiety disorder. They diagnosed me, and I was also going through the breakup of my ex-husband, my husband at the time. And I remember that I tried everything. I was obviously practicing Bikram yoga, maybe not every day, but still a lot. I was, going out in nature. I was changing my diet. I was doing many things to.
You were trying to get out of that depression and anxiety. Yes,
exactly. But it was it was very very hard and challenging. And then I remember that I think I called you or texted you, and I said, so now I have the diagnosis and they want to give me antidepressants. And then you said, well, give me 5 sessions, and if you still need the antidepressants after, then you can take them. And I remember that we probably had like 2 or 3, I don't know, we had more after, but it was probably just the second or the third session we had. And I just actually came also back from a Bikram yoga retreat in Ibiza, where I also still like cried a lot, and I was still very unhappy there though. And then I came back, and I remember that day was probably one of the darkest and saddest of my life, because I was really crying the whole time in Ibiza at the airport, then in the flight, then at London, Heathrow, at the immigration, and all the way through the train journey home. And it was just crazy. I think people must have looked at me and think she's super crazy, because I couldn't stop myself crying. And because of the time difference, we had our session very late in the evening for me, so it was 10 p.m. or something. And and I remember I was sitting there and I was crying, and then you said something like, but I know you will help many people and so on. And I was just like, no, I don't know how, and what do you mean? And I really didn't understand. I was just so much in my misery. And then you said something which really changed my life, and I shared it on my podcast a lot and with other people. But you just said to me, Nadine, you just have to decide to be happy. Like, you have to.
So simple. I remember telling you that. Right? I was in Cape Town that time when we had our session. I remember it. It was 10 p.m. for you, and I was in Cape Town, and we had that session. And I remember saying that to you. You just have to decide to be happy.
Yeah. And really, thank you for that, because I mean, it is so simple, and it sounds like, you cannot just say that.
It's very powerful.
But yes, because it is actually a decision. Like it triggered something in me, and it made me realize, okay, I can actually decide how I feel. And I wanted to be in that misery. I wanted to be sad. I wanted to be like upset. I wanted to, feel bad for myself and my life. Yes. And, I felt so much self-pity, and, everything was so terrible, and what happened to my husband at the time. And that's another story. But, there were a lot of things happening, and it was very difficult, but I was just so upset about my past and so afraid of my future. But I was caught up in all these thoughts about how terrible my life is or was.
Yes. And it's funny that you said that you wanted to feel like that. You wanted to feel miserable. You wanted to feel like that. So that's very important for people to recognize, is whatever it is that you are allowing yourself to feel is because you want to feel like that. And the moment you decide you want to have something different, you can. It's that simple.
Very true. But you need that moment, right? I'm not sure if you would have said that to me, 3 months earlier, if I could have. But I remember in that moment something clicked, and I decided, and that's another really important thing, you have to decide. And I decided, okay, I don't want to cry anymore. I'm so done with it, because I think I've been crying probably straight every single day for like 1.5 years or so. And I also looked like that. I was much younger than now, and I looked much older, I think, because I was just crying so much that my face, my eyes, I was just in a horrible place. And I was like, no, I'm so done with it. Like, I don't want to cry anymore. If she says you just have to decide to be happy, I try. I was like, okay, what do I have to lose? So I try. And I remember that then after the session, I was living in a house in London, and I was running down the stairs, and I was just thinking to myself, okay, I'm happy. Like, what can I do to be happy? And I was dancing, and I was just moving, and I was just trying everything, and really trying to change my state and my self-talk, and just talking to myself in a different way. And whenever the dark negative thoughts they came, I was just like, no, I don't want to hear it. Like, what else, what can, like, positive can I think about? And it really changed, and I stopped crying that day, like, for a long time, until things happen and you still cry, and that's fine also. But this, like, every day
is not healthy.
No. So that stopped that day. And then from that day on, I was getting better and better. It was still a journey, right? It was not the next day. Like, I was
newborn, course. It's always a journey.
It was the start of a journey. So
but it's so worth it, isn't it, to go through that? Because I do believe that every personal challenge is a springboard for progress. Like, you would have never found this person that you are now if it wasn't for that. Right. Exactly. So we don't have to, it's all part of the life's design, that we have to have these things that happen to us, because they really just a springboard for us to to get to greater heights in our life, you know.
Yeah.
And so tell us, so that's a great story. So you decided to be happy and you decided to do things that made you happy. And then how did the happiness podcast come to life?
Well, so what did I mean, also at that time I started to listen to a podcast in German of a German podcaster, and she's also a coach, and she was interviewing people, and I find it very inspirational. And I remember at the time my friend who recommended me the podcast said, yeah, it's a shame because we're living both in London but German speaking, like we cannot share the podcast with our English speaking friends because it was only existing in German. And then I think, we were like, oh, but you should create a podcast. And then I think she always said that to me, like, but yeah, you should speak about your story and you should share that and you should create a podcast. And I was thinking, no, I don't know. The thought was placed, the idea was placed, but then
the seed was buried.
Exactly.
Yeah, the seed.
Yeah. And I remember also again then in 2019 when we met in Spain, also at the teacher training, that we were also speaking about your podcast.
So I was like, I need to start this podcast thing, and then I did, which is great.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it was the same for me. I wanted to share with people how spirituality is part of our daily life, because I think spirituality sometimes for a lot of people feel like, they don't want to be involved in it, or because spirituality sometimes gets confused with religion, but it isn't. It's like I always say, like, spirituality is the banana and religion is the peel. It's like, so it's something quite deeper, right? And so I wanted to just have conversations with people that has found their spirituality on their journey in their life, like with their normal life. We don't have to go to the Himalayas, we don't have to go sit in a cave, because I believe that your spirituality is part of your daily life. When you're raising children, when you getting married, when you with whatever you're doing in your life, spirituality is part of it. How you interact with other people, how you interact with your food, how you interact with nature, all this stuff is part of spirituality. And so I was inspired to, to have conversations about how different people find spirituality in their daily life. And so I just started to do it. And luckily for me, like, I know quite a lot of people. Because I've traveled also around the world. And so I try to really, bring people that where they have done that in their life through whatever they're doing, they found their spirituality. And like, for example, like you, when you were in a place where you couldn't find your happiness, but you decided that you're going to find it and you're going to look for it and you're going to do activities that's going to help you to find that. And so once you understood that about yourself, you wanted to help others. And through the podcast, you are helping others. So that to me is what inspires me to interview people like yourself, and because it's in the everyday life.
Yeah, very true. And I mean, that's what Tony Robbins says as well, right? Like business is a spiritual game. So I think
totally,
it's also how we express ourselves in the world. And I think, again, when I was, like in a dark place before the teacher training, I had this calling that I wanted to help people. So the first step was, becoming a yoga teacher because I wanted to help people. And then now the podcast is, because I want to inspire people. And then I became a coach also to, like help people, guide people, like tell them, like I could actually really like shake them like you did with me and, tell them face to face, like, you can do it. If I could do it, you can do it.
And isn't it wonderful?
Yeah.
Isn't it so rewarding when when just by being, and it's funny, like you said, you wanted to help other people, because that's how I remember when more than 25 years ago, when I first started with yoga teacher training, I remember that I wanted to help people. But you know what I discovered over the last 25 years is the only person I ever needed to really help was myself. And as I helped myself more and more, just as a result of that, just my presence, my being, helping others. But so this whole thing, we start there, like we want to help others, but then the only thing is that we can always just help ourselves. And then as a result of that, we get to help the world. So it's like, and that's what the yoga journey takes us through. It takes you through this path of understanding that, first you have to help yourself. But sometimes it comes in the way of, I want to help others, and that's okay. And you know why? Because there are no others.
Mm.
And when you understand that in a big way, then I think it's the Dalai Lama that says, be the change you want to see in the world. It's kind of like
definitely.
that. You know, you cannot help anybody. You cannot do anything that you haven't done for yourself. You cannot have compassion if you don't have compassion for yourself. Actually, you cannot love anybody if you don't love yourself. And that's why so many relationships don't really work out, because people don't love themselves yet. They don't know how. They haven't found the way, you know. Yeah. So then you started your happiness podcast, and tell us a little bit about, you know, what is the outcome? What happens? What did you find out? Did you learn things? Of course, you learned things.
Definitely. So I started actually interviewing probably exactly a year ago. So I did my first interview exactly on this balcony with my best friend, Victoria. You might have met her in London, actually. And so I was like, okay, she's the one who told me I should do the podcast in the first place. So I started. And then, like you, I thought, okay, I know a lot of people, like who are maybe the most inspirational people I know. So I can interview them and ask and share their life stories, because so why did I call it, it's called Happiness Safari Podcast, and because I spent a year in Kenya, and safari in Swahili means journey, so it's basically the journey of happiness. And because I call it that way, because I thought that's really my journey, and of course it includes a lot of spirituality. So the podcast I was listening to, the German one, is also a very spiritual podcast. But yeah, I thought it's really that we are all on a journey to finding our own happiness, or to expressing it. And as you say, when we find it, we make ourselves happier, we love ourselves, we know ourselves, then we can actually help others, be there for others, show up in the world. And and then I thought, okay, it's very, very broad word, happiness, so it has a different meaning to everyone. That's why I always ask first, like, what does happiness mean to you, because it means something very different to everyone. And then I like to share the stories, you know, not of super famous rich successful people. Whatever success means, that's another definition, right? But people who actually manage to, like, integrate happiness in their life, or to find something which makes them happy, or to find a way to help other people to be happy, or, you know, whatever it is. So that actually every person, no matter where they are in their life, no matter if they have children or not, if they're divorced or not, single or not, no matter where they come from, that they all maybe had this one day, or this calling, or this moment in life where they thought, okay, now I want to change something. And so I'm sharing the story and the journeys of what they changed, and how they became the person they are now. And this is also just a moment, right? A picture of a moment, because then again, it's a journey which continues also after.
Yes. Yeah, because life is a constant change. Everything is constantly changing. And so I was actually thinking about when you talked about this happiness thing, because I remember perhaps when you first started it, you asked me to write it out for you. What does happiness mean for me? And I sent it to you. And I'm trying to think back to it now. Excuse me. And I'm thinking, like, if you ask me that question today, it might look slightly different, probably a little bit around the same, but it might look slightly different. And I think in the way that it would look different to me is that it's way more simple. But I'll wait for that until you interview me on your podcast, and then we will, you know, talk about it further. But yeah, the one thing that I could say is probably that it's way more simple.
Yeah.
Simplified. Yeah.
Yeah. True. Because actually,
yes.
Yeah, when I was starting traveling, because then actually in 2019 I quit my corporate job to travel and to teach, and then I actually started with an Instagram account sharing, and that's when I send you the questions.
Yeah, exactly.
So that
I remember it something.
Exactly. And then because I thought, okay, I wanted to do a podcast, but I wasn't really sure, you know, would I just have solo episodes? But I actually felt like I wanted to interview people. But then I thought also, okay, what do I interview people on? And then I started to ask just a question. So I think the first 10 episodes, I was asking the 3 questions. But then obviously all the questions also led to a longer conversation. Until then I changed actually, and I realized, okay, I ask people for their journey, and then I still ask the 3 questions at the end, because I find it very interesting. But that's how it
Yeah.
started.
And I think that's also so wonderful now that, see, when we tell our story, everybody's story is so colorful and so beautiful. And when we tell our story, two things happen. We get to realize how amazing our life is and our journey. And then we also get to inspire others, because all of us, it doesn't matter who you are, there was some trauma, there was some heartbreak, there was some, suffering, there was some pain, because I don't think nobody comes through this life journey without those things, because we're human. And so sometimes when people are in that place of that suffering and that pain, and like we're perhaps in that dark place that you remember you were, and you just feel hopeless. But when you hear somebody telling their story and they got out of it, then you get, oh, there is hope. Yeah. There is light at the end of the tunnel. So we never know how our story can have an impact on others. And so I'm so grateful for many people like yourself. And there are many people now around who have created podcasts, because I think it's important that we share our story, that we, that we get the opportunity to inspire others and ourselves about our story. And also, I remember years and years ago when I first told my story. Before that, I used to think that, if your life was like this, you want it to be like that. If you always think you want something opposite. And then I realized that, my story was just different. It was just different. It wasn't worse. It wasn't better. It was different. And so if you can recognize that everybody chooses to have a different story, but yet we're all having kind of the same, experience here. We all have to go through pain and suffering. We all have to go through some sort of challenge to help us to wake up, to help us to wake up to our true nature, So it's, in the end, it's not so bad. But when you're going through it, when you're in that dark place, then, we can all do with a little bit of inspiration. And so that's why I think these podcasts that we keep putting out, I started with this podcast and I thought to myself, if it only helps one person, I'll be happy. Well, it's definitely helped more than one person, which I'm happy to say thank you to my listeners and people sharing it. And so, because for me, it's like, if it helps one person, it's worth it.
True. Yeah.
Because and I know that when you're in a dark place and something can inspire you, it means the world.
Yeah.
It really does. It really means the world. I mean, look at how something so simple like, you can decide to be happy. That kind of comment was the comment that pulled you out. So we just never know. Like you said, you don't know what day you're going to be ready to receive it, when it's going to click. So we keep putting it out there, and eventually, if it clicks with you, it clicks with you. And I think that's our, as part of being, as part of being a human being, I think that we need to help each other. Because sometimes some of us are up and sometimes some of us are down, and it's just this like, we just keep going on with that, and you never know when you're going to be the one up or the one down. So we keep giving to each other from that place.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why I do my podcast, just, anything that will help even one person in a day. And I often, one of the things that warms my heart the most is I often get people reaching out to me and telling me, thank you for this week's podcast. And it's helped me so much. And I remember one of the listeners once said to me, I've listened to this one 10 times now. And I'm like, okay, because they got so much out of it. So that warms my heart a lot, because it makes it worth it because, you have to a little bit do some research, you have to reach out, you have to give a little bit of your time, but if it helps somebody else, and even I love it. Like now we're talking to you, like, I haven't talked to you like this in a long time because we're both busy. And so it's really great for me to catch up with people too. And and I hope that you obviously have the same with your podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I love it as well. I realized like so much because I was traveling, and then I realized, okay, I missed a little bit having a team like I had in my corporate job, and having people to talk with like to every day, because when you're an entrepreneur, like you do your own business, you basically are alone all the time. And even if you travel with someone, but you sit in front of your laptop and you just work, and that is it. And then when I started the podcast and I had these interviews, and most of them I've done last year when I was in Peru. And so every morning I had 1 or 2 podcasts scheduled, and I was just getting up, and then I had these amazing conversations with like such inspiring people. Like some of them I knew, some of them I didn't know, and some of them I haven't talked to like in a long time, like yourself. And it was just, yeah, so amazing. And every time after podcast in the morning, it's just like, oh, this was just the best thing ever. It's like the happiness I have when I'm teaching a yoga class is the same, right? Like you're giving something or you're getting something at the same time, and just the connection with people. So then that always set me up for the day. And yeah, it's the same now actually.
Yeah. So basically, when you run your podcast with your people, that's brings you happiness. Because I was going to ask you, since you are the author of the Happiness Podcast, like what makes you happy, Nadine? Tell us a little bit about your happiness now. We heard about your dark place. Let's tell us about your happiness. What makes you happy?
I thought about this a lot, obviously, because you have to, if that's your theme. Yes. But I do think in the end, it's really connection. It's connection to people, and it doesn't really matter in what form or shape, but it is this true connection, this connection on a deeper level, I mean, I don't know. I have that when I teach and I sit on the podium and they are lying in Shavasana and it's absolutely still, and I look around and it's sometimes like a tear drops because I'm thinking, oh my God, this is just so amazing. That I get to do this and guide these people and they trust me, and then I feel like really connected. But when I have a conversation like this, and that is always the case in a podcast, because people open up. I mean, they share their life stories, they share their darkest places, they share their biggest fears, they, share their darkest moments and their happiest moments, and all of it. And then I feel so connected, because I think when you have a conversation with a stranger on the street, or even with your friends, like you can feel connected, but often we have such superficial conversations. We ask ourselves, how are you? But we don't really ask each other, how are you really? Or we ask, what have you done today? But we're not really asking, I don't know, what is the best thing, the happiest moment you experienced today? Or what is the one problem which keeps you up at night? Or we don't really know each other that well always, and I'm trying to integrate that in all my relationships, but it makes me really happy when I can have a connection to people. It doesn't matter if it's strangers or friends, but when I feel that.
Most people, unfortunately, walk in the world guarded. So they guard themselves because they think they don't want to show who they are, because they don't want to show their vulnerabilities, because a lot of stuff is hidden behind, and they also feel like if they show you their vulnerabilities, that you will judge them. And of course, a lot of people, when they have trusted in the past, somebody supposedly broke their heart, or, how the stories go. But here's the thing, is that you will never run out of love. That's just not going to happen. And if you've had your heart broken once, it's okay. The heart is so resilient. And also some other people think like, oh, I already have enough people in my life, I don't want to trust more people in my life. And that's like, it's unending how much you can fit into your heart. It's unending. And I remember that when with my grandchildren, like I have 2 grandsons. And I remember when my daughter first said that she was pregnant, I was like, oh, that was a little weird. I was like, oh, how's that going to work for me? Like I didn't know. And of course, the moment my grandson was born, something just happens and your heart just opens up wider. And then when my second grandson was born, I was like, oh, well, I really love my grandson. Like, how is this going to fit in? And the heart just expands more. And it's like unbelievable how much you can expand. So don't worry about closing your heart, because there's so much space to expand. And every human being, it's like you said, if you can, open your heart to everyone that you meet, because there's always space for more. And there's always space for more. And the more you allow yourself to open your heart, the more you can gonna see the infinite that life is. Like there's no end to it, and there's no end to you. There's no end to your capacity for love. So when we guard ourselves, we limit ourselves. When we close our heart, we limit ourselves. And so then we don't experience the infinite that life is, and the infinite that love is. So, you know, so don't worry about guarding yourself, people. Just keep it open, keep expanding, keep expanding, keep expanding, because you can.
That's what Rumi said as well. You have to break your heart as many times until it opens.
I'm telling you, wide open. And then you realize there's nothing that can break your heart. Because the heart, when it's broken, is when you think it's broken, it's just that ego mind that thinks your heart is being broken, because it's always about somebody did something to you. He left me, she died, whatever, they disappeared, they don't like me anymore. It's always about the other doing something to you. Well, nobody's really doing anything to you. It's your expectation of them, right, that creates that. So then if that expectation is not met, now your heart is broken. But it's not really your heart, because your heart can be broken. But for the ego mind, it has to break from its limitations so that you can see that it's infinite. Yeah.
It's so interesting. I think, like you said, probably similar things to me also when you coached me. And I remember that I didn't really get you sometimes, or I didn't really want to understand. I don't think I was ready for the message, you know, for some of it. But I
gave it anyway.
Exactly. But I still think it does something to the subconscious to hear it. So I think also for the listeners, if you sometimes think, oh, this is too spiritual maybe, or too deep, or I mean, what is she saying? I cannot feel pain if somebody leaves me or dies or something like that. You know, it's like, I was thinking the same, but trust me, like she's speaking to your soul. So deep inside, you know, she's right. And it will, like now, to me, like now also to my ego and my mind, it makes so much more sense.
Exactly. And it's true what you say. You see, every cell in your body has all the information of the infinite. And when it gets the message of that, it recognizes it. And you will kind of wake it up. You wake it up, and then it just takes time for you to wake up to it. But once you wake it up, there's no going back. So life is going to take you on that journey where it's going to show you that stuff. Yeah. So that's the wonderful thing about how we exist. It's really beautiful. And Nadine, I want to thank you so much for coming and talking to us and about your happiness podcast and your little life journey. And it's been just so amazing to see you grow. And like sometimes it takes a few years, you know, before you can see, you know, what, how far you've come. And it's just inspiring, and it's so beautiful. You were always beautiful, you just didn't know it, and now you get to see it, and you get to live it, and you get to share it. And there is nothing better than that in this life. There really truly isn't. So I wish you all the success in the world and all the happiness and the joy which you're already experiencing. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing yourself so openly with us, with your heart open. And our listeners, you're very, you know, it's such a great privilege to have somebody like Nadine share her story, because it's possible. You know, if you're feeling stuck, just make sure that you understand that you have the power to make a decision. And if you make a decision and you truly want to, and that's the other part that has to come, you have to want to do it. Because if you want to stay in your misery, you will stay there. You have to want to come out of it, and then opportunities and people will just come. Because the universe is always ready to help you, but you have to make a decision, right? So we'll leave it there today, Nadine. Thank you so much. Appreciate it so much. And I look forward to coming on your podcast and talking a little bit about happiness and how I perceive it and my point of view about it. And I will share it, of course, with our listeners. And today I am going to put all Nadine's information at the bottom of this podcast, where you can reach her, and you can also listen to her podcast. And I just thank you so much. And you look amazing. And enjoy Portugal and the ocean.
Thank you. Stop it.
Until next time.
Thank you, Deborah, also for what you're doing. I'm very, very, I'm appreciating it a lot also that you invite me, but also that you are who you are and you do what you do, and just, you know, like teaching, guiding people, and now inspiring people through your podcast. And I mean, it's very, very important work. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you, Nadine. I appreciate you and I love you. Until next time.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.